Now, we're going to go to Clint Curtis in an interview that will absolutely leave you stunned, because your vote, no matter how you vote, no longer matters. It's irrelevant. This man, Clint Curtis, wrote the software that flips the votes, steals the vote. Doesn't matter if 90% voted this way, it can flip the vote and say 51% that way and 49% that way. We'll go to that in the room. They have these memory cards where they scan the votes before they send it to the county central from the precinct. They wire it down in a millisecond.
You're talking a man-in-the-middle type of an operation? Or?
Yeah. They say they've got a gizmo that can flip the vote.
Possibly, but wouldn't they then compare the totals on their machines with the numbers that came down? I mean, we actually had this, I worked with some people in Italy that had this issue. This exact issue where the machine totals did not total the same as the tabulator it came down to. And it looked like all of the votes that had come in from military were being flipped for the guy who was in power. But the problem was that a lot of these people did not vote the normal way. They actually went to the polls, and so the guy still lost. But Italy has done away with electronic voting after that. They don't use it at all.
Really? They went back to
paper. They kicked it.
Should America go back to paper ballots?
America should go back to paper ballots.
Hand counted in the precinct?
Hand counted in the precinct. It's the only safe way to do it, and it really doesn't take that long because the precincts are staffed to the point where you can do it. You get it to a tabulator. I mean, let's say you're in Miami. You have 10,000 precincts. Sounds like a lot. But you also have, people at each precinct, so they're only counting 1,500 votes, 2,000 votes. They're not counting that much. But when you take that 10,000, you take it by 2,000, now you move it onto a central system, then there's this huge stack of votes that have to be counted. And honestly, how do you count 2 million votes? You can't count those by hand.
Right.
So they've self-created their own problem. If they count at the precinct level, it would be 2,000 votes. They counted at the main level, it's now 2 million votes. You have to have a computer to count 2 million votes. You don't have to have a computer to count 2,000.
What do you think about these voting in Arizona where people can vote from their home computer?
Terrible idea. The internet is less secure than even the machines. At least the machines have some form of security involved. Whereas if you're transferring things over the web, it's potluck. Now you have more ports, so you have more entry to it.
Did you hear about the district where all their voting machines had a fire and all burned up before they could be...
I heard about that. Do
you think that was just an accidental fire?
I don't know. It seems odd. Well, in Florida, when I was fighting to get rid of the machines here, and I finally succeeded in them saying we're not going to use these anymore, as opposed to selling them to the public to be actually inspected, they took them, disassembled them, and crushed them. These expensive machines, rather than sell them to surplus, except for the ones they actually could sell to other states. And the ones they sold to other states, guess which state got it? South Carolina, which had that really weird election where that guy who didn't run in the senatorial campaign, the vagrant guy, unemployed guy that was being charged with some sort of crime, actually beat the person who had a chance to win. And who got that? South Carolina. So
you're saying Florida threw away the machines and sold some to South Carolina, and they actually disassembled and crushed the machines. What year did they do that? And why do you suspect they would rather crush the machines after they disassembled them than let people buy them and inspect them and dissect them and figure out just how malleable the elections had been? Or is that a rhetorical question?
It would have been probably 2007, maybe, when they finally did that. And essentially, it seems to me that what you're doing is you're covering up the possibility that someone's going to go in there and find out there's something wrong. Either find the code or find an entry point to hack it. And you really are going to be embarrassed if either one of those happens, since you've kind of said, that none of this happened. We're just getting rid of it because people don't want it anymore, rather than we're getting rid of it because we know it's defective.
How
So
many other states have done away with these vote scamming machines besides Florida?
a handful. I'm thinking 20. 25 is what we've been successful at. And even those are only partial in some regard. Because a lot of people, well, most people that have gotten rid of the electronic machines still don't count them. They now have a paper ballot where you fill in a bubble, but they send it through a scanning machine. The scanning machine could have the same software issue that the touchscreen has. It doesn't make any difference. It's still a computer. So if you had a certain pattern of voting that made that key as it went through, every time I vote, I'm a Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, whatever your coding is. When it hits that, it would then take the votes and make the flip. And you'd never see it. You never could. Because it would change it would change the log, it would change everything, and it would change it instantaneous. Because they don't take periodic logs. So they don't take a log every 10th one and remove it from the machine. They take a log when it's done, which is no log at all. If you control the records, you're going to change them to fit. So essentially that's what's happening. So you don't have that. Then you have the paper, you set it over here, and you can't count it. In Florida, in fact, it is illegal for the supervisor of elections to count those ballots manually and compare them to the machines. We don't know
You
why.
say it's illegal for them to count the ballots manually and compare to the machine?
It is illegal for them to count the ballots manually and compare them to the machines.
Today, in 2011.
Yes.
But I thought they did away with the machines in
Well, they
Florida.
still have the Scantrons.
Oh, they still got memory card things that could be flipped.
Yes. And not only that, but, it can flip as it goes through. But it's illegal for the supervisor of elections to actually do the comparison themselves. They can get a request from a candidate. The candidate has to pay, and you have to catch the right one. So it becomes very complicated. It basically shuts down any chance of verification of what's going on. And once again, they collect them from the precincts, bring them into a central area, so they're kind of counted in secret. Even though you can see it,
You can't really tell what
you can't tell what's doing. I mean, it's impossible to get any real feel for something if you're seeing 2 million ballots being sent through a machine from 20 feet away. You can't even read them.
What Congress people did Tom Feeney have influence over, do you think, or do you know?
Well, he was associated with that whole leadership that came in 2004, 2002, I think it was. So that whole group that came in, the Tom DeLay group. So, he was
Shouldn't
part of
Tom
that.
DeLay be in prison already?
Tom DeLay is in prison, I believe.
He's
For
sentenced, but isn't he out until the appeal is over?
he might be. I'm not sure.
Duke Cunningham from San Diego went to prison.
Yep. Duke
But-
Cunningham.
Trafficant went to prison, but he said he was a good guy, and they put him in prison because he was trying to expose corruption. Do you believe that?
I don't know anything
You
about the
don't know
case.
anything about
I don't know
that.
about the case. Yeah.
He's from Ohio. So
It's hard to say. There's always something, but it's hard to say.
this Henry Nee, how do you spell his last name?
N-E-E.
N-A-E.
N-E-E.
Is he still in prison?
Oh, he never went to prison.
He was busted by the FBI. What happened to him?
He got a $50 fine, and he wasn't even deported.
$50 fine for doing what exactly?
Admitting to selling, shipping multiple times Hellfire missile defense guidance chips to Communist China.
And he worked for the Shane Corporation
Yes.
with major NASA contracts.
Yes.
When I say major, the value of in excess of maybe $10 million.
Yes.
Does that sound like,
It sounds like we just don't care. It
is
sounds.
it the media, is it the mainstream media is not reporting? I never heard of this Henry Nee.
It was actually in the paper. Not that he worked at Yang, and not that they had contracts. They don't connect the dots, but it was in the paper. You can Google him, Henry Nee.
So the paper didn't connect the dots completely.
Right. They just said
And Fox News somehow missed reporting these dots.
Fox News isn't really news. I mean, come on.
They claim to be
I don't even think they claim to be
fair
anyway.
and balanced.
I don't even think they believe it when they say it. I think they smile when they say it. They know better. And everyone makes fun of them now, so I'm pretty sure that everyone knows it, except for the people that will never know it, no matter how much it hits them in the face.
This vote rigging software that you wrote should have brought some congressional inquiries, don't you think?
Yes.
Shouldn't have John Conyers called you up and said, hello?
Well, we talked with his people, but at that time, the Republicans were very heavy-handed. They had Bush, they had a majority, and basically Conyers was shoved to the basement and couldn't even get a hearing. I mean, if you look at the Ohio hearing, the reason it was held in Ohio was not because it was about Ohio, it was because the Republicans wouldn't give him a room to hold the hearing in D.C.
So whose hearing was that in Ohio?
That was Conyers. But he couldn't have held it in D.C. because they wouldn't give him a room. They wouldn't schedule him a room to hold it.
I didn't know that.
It's very politicized. It's very strange that we're accepting this. And it's getting worse, but, you know. I have hopes that someday, you know, the people will rise up as they have in Egypt and they have in others, and they will take control back. But it will come.
Do you think the people would rise up if accidentally Fox, CNN, ABC always put this interview I'm doing with you is on TV tomorrow night? Do you think they would rise up, or do you think they just don't really care?
Well, like I said, a lot of people don't care. I mean, not just the Republicans on TV, but I've spoken to several, you know, on the street, and you see it in the media that, you know, talk about, well, democracy's fine as long as it's our brand of democracy. So they don't really care about the will of the people. They don't really care that democracy is, you know, a populist-based thing, and that even if it goes through some sort of trial and tribulation, it will come out good. It's, no, we need to control it. We don't care what the people want. This is what we want. And there's a lot of them that way. You see it with the Bush, with the Obama people all the time. They don't care whether Obama won or not. They want him out of there. They just as soon have a fixed election as have a real one, as long as their guy wins the fix.
Do you think Obama won the election honestly?
Yes. I think he would have lost, like I said before, if Pennsylvania had gotten tighter. I don't think he'd be president. I think we'd have John McCain.
But hasn't he continued Bush's policy? He said he was going to end the war. He's continued, escalated the war. He's going to be out in 1 year. We're now in the third year of Obama's war.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
So is that any change?
It's not. And the economic policy is just as bad. It's
and
still...
Bush in his last month said to Hank Paulson, go bail out the bank gangsters and Wall Street and make secret deals, and you don't have to tell anybody. And didn't Obama expand those bailouts?
Pretty much.
So there's no real change of policy.
There hasn't been a change of policy.
So
and there hasn't been a movement to fix the fair and balanced problem, where they actually have a way of communicating to people on all levels. They haven't fixed the problem of the voting issue. And until they address that, probably not much else is really going to matter anyway.
A young man named Michael Warnken was recently on my show, well, not recently, about a year ago. He said it isn't going to get better no matter what we do until we get the ratio of representation back to under 30,000 per congressman. And now it's at about 720,000 people.
How many people would that be?
It would be around 10,000 House Rep members. But it's interesting because that's what's mentioned in the Federalist Papers, and that's what's in the Constitution for reapportionment is 30,000 to 1. We have just ignored that.
I think that a legislative body of 10,000 people would be unmanageable. Don't you?
Not as unmanageable as rigged elections.
Well, rigged elections are very manageable. The same people stay.
March men into death. That's power. We continue to make money as the world burns.
Some of you heard the state of Hawaii released my official long-form birth certificate.
Well, look who's here to push your husband's socialist health care agenda. Well, Big Bird. Or maybe you're here to finally show us your husband's United States birth certificate.
No, Big Bird, I'm not.
That's because you can't. Are you absolutely sure he wasn't born in Kenya?
I'm sure, Big Bird.
Kenya.
That's not what the basket bunch says.
Yes, your husband's a stinking liar.
We're gonna run him out of office.
Iraq has led by example. When we took our trip to Africa and visited his home country in Kenya, Kenya.
We continue to make money as the world burns.
You say guns will be taken?
Yeah, no one will be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
The police and National Guard going street by street, entering open houses with guns drawn, and instructions to disarm anyone inside.
For anyone who has studied history, it's very clear. Tyrants do not want armed slaves. Slaves are disarmed. As the bumper sticker reads, politicians love disarmed peasants. The first gun control laws in this country were against newly emancipated freed slaves at the end of the Civil War. We've seen a lot of federal power grabs. We've seen Obama launch wars in Libya without congressional approval and levy carbon taxes without Congress. We've seen the power of the bureaucracy grow unchecked. But today, I want to talk to you about one of the most brazen and shocking examples of this I have ever seen. No, I'm not talking about the internet kill switch they've put in place or calls restrict free speech that are public. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives announcing to Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California, outside of law, with no law, that when a gun dealer sells 2 or more rifles to someone, they've got to file a suspicious activities report with the ATF. Now remember, when you get those guns, there's an instant check done with the FBI where your background check is run, and on the form, what you're buying and what you're doing is all filled out. And that's under federal law. Albeit unconstitutional, it's still law. What the ATF announced months ago was, well, we're getting a law passed by Congress, and they introduced a bill, the Democrats did, where when you buy 2 or more rifles, you have to report it and fill out a suspicious activity report on the person to the ATF.
The rule that was put in place to report on rifles that are long guns that are being sold, was also, they testified, very helpful.
The demand letter reporting the multiple sale of those rifles would be helpful for us, yes.
Is there any other tool that this Congress could give you?
Well, guess what happened? Congress didn't pass that law. And so Obama said, who needs Congress? And he sent letters on July 12th to every federal firearms licensee or seller in those 4 states. He sent them letters and said, you will now report. You are ordered. You are commanded. And I have a copy of the letter given to me by a good friend who owns a gun shop here in Austin, Texas. And they have no law authorizing this. And when my friend, who's a gun dealer, called the ATF and talked to Daniel Jones, the head of the ATF here in Austin, he called him 2 weeks before this letter came out because it was in the news that the ATF was already ordering gun shops to do this without law. And he said, do I have to do this to Daniel Jones? And Daniel said, no, the bill has failed in Congress, and obviously we can't enforce something if it's not the law, so don't worry about it. Well, a few weeks later, he got this letter telling him that the ATF was ordering him in America, outside of law, to do this. That is the essence of tyranny. And then I began to remember that Obama had told the Brady campaign and others, it had been in the Washington Post, World Net Daily, months before, don't worry, I can't get the votes in Congress to restrict guns. I'm going to use the executive branch and the bureaucracy by stealth or, quote, under the radar. This is illegal, but they're setting a precedent where the ATF, outside of law, basically turns them into confidential informants against law-abiding citizens. I have confirmed through 2 Texas gun dealers and through someone in my office that when you buy 2 rifles, and by the way, it's in this letter, or 2 handguns, revolver or pistol, that you get an ATF or FBI visit to your house and they demand to come in your home and see your guns without a warrant. It's a chilling effect. It's intimidation, just like in Nazi Germany. And I got another document that the FBI has issued to gun dealers implying that people buying guns who talk about stopping power, and if they ask what's a good gun to stop a criminal, that you're to call the FBI on them. Remember New Orleans with the police chief under federal orders saying all the guns will be taken, no one will be allowed to be armed. Remember the Army, regular Army and National Guard being sent into wealthy, high and dry areas and going in and blowing open their gun safes and taking their guns and arresting the legal, lawful gun owners. The system does not want armed citizens. They want to set a precedent. And as our country goes into designed banker depression, as we implode, they are coming after our guns. This is how the war against the British Empire started in 1776 at Lexington and Concord. The system is having the police and military start a fight where they know gun-owning constitutionalists are not going to go along with it. They are going to start responding as things degenerate, and they're going to be called terrorists. The system, the social engineers, are sending the ATF and the feds on a collision course with law-abiding, patriotic Americans so they can kick off a civil war in America. In closing, I want to give you the good news. It was ATF agents that had some good left in them, like Darth Vader, that blew the whistle when 3 Border Patrol agents and 5 police officers were killed in the last year by guns that the government shipped into Mexico. And then the Attorney General, Eric Holder, lied and said that he didn't. He's been caught perjuring himself. The head of the ATF has exposed that. We now learn that the FBI and DEA are involved in Fast and Furious. And even when they were caught, they still use it to restrict the Second Amendment outside of law because they are criminals. And it's time for good police officers, ATF, FBI, DEA, and others to say, no, I'm not shipping guns to Mexico or Honduras or to Miami to drug gangs to cause a crime wave so you can disarm law-abiding citizens. Hold this criminal agency and their boss, the Attorney General of the United States, accountable because they've been caught on record. And ATF agents have testified that they talked to the White House and they were under Justice Department orders. Of course they were. This is the covert undermining of the Second Amendment and a staged terror attack with these guns to blame law-abiding citizens as this country goes into a depression and we need these guns to protect ourselves. The dirtbag control freaks at the Brady Center and the Violence Policy Center and the rest of them know what they're doing. They're in the business of bringing America to its knees and disarming the American people so we can live under a tyranny. And even when they're caught, they're so arrogant and so full of chutzpah and bravado that they come out and use what they've publicly staged outside of law to order the gun shops to do this, and then they go to the people that have bought the guns homes and harass them without warrants. This is the fall of the republic if we don't stand up against it. I'm Alex Jones reporting from the front lines of the info war. You have been warned. Now please warn others. Ask yourselves, what are you doing in this time of great challenge? What are you doing to unlock minds? Go to Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.tv for the latest headlines and cutting-edge information.
Jack Cafferty's here with the Cafferty File. Jack. Wolf, in case you needed it, here's another sign just how bad this economy is. Illegal aliens are leaving the United States, returning to Mexico in search of a better life. That's correct. One Mexican official told the Sacramento Bee newspaper Mexico has, quote, become a middle-class country, unquote, where it's now easier to buy homes on credit, get higher education, and find a job. Not so here in the colonies, where the employment picture remains grim indeed. Major American corporations are announcing another round of layoffs. Companies like Cisco, Goldman Sachs, Lockheed Martin, and Merck. Thousands of American jobs being eliminated. And a report from payroll processor ADP shows that although the private sector added jobs in July, the growth was well below what's needed for a steady economic recovery. Meantime, as we await the monthly jobs report from the government due Friday morning, consider this. Mexico's unemployment rate, 4.9%. The U.S. unemployment rate, 9.2%. You do the math. It's estimated that about 300,000 illegal aliens have left California alone since 2008. Experts say the weaker U.S. economy, along with rising deportations, tougher border enforcement, means fewer illegal aliens. But there have also been significant improvements in Mexico. That country's economy is now growing 4 to 5%. According to the UN, Mexico's average standard of living, which includes things like health, education, and per capita income, is higher now than in Russia, China, and India. Turns out Mexicans might just have better luck achieving the American dream south of the border, in their own country. Here's the question. What does it say that illegal aliens are leaving the United States and going back to Mexico in search of a better life? Go to CNN.com/Cafferty File, post a comment on my blog. Did you ever think you'd hear that story, Wolf?
You know, it's rough out there for everyone.
Pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, pretty amazing indeed. All right, Jack, thank you. Jack's back with the Cafferty File. Jack.
Question this hour is, what does it say that illegal aliens leaving the U.S. returning to Mexico in search of a better life? 300,000 of them have left California since 2008. Philip Rice, can you imagine truckloads of middle-class Americans sneaking into Mexico for a better life? It may be the only way to save the middle class in this country. Richard in Pennsylvania. Jack, it says that things are looking up. More jobs for Americans, fewer drugs for Americans, fewer drugs and murders, and maybe this will have a positive effect on the border states. Politicians won't do anything to protect our borders, so the slumping economy will do their job. How ironic. Dave in Orlando writes, it says we're officially a third world country. We've been driven into the ground by special interests, philandering, pandering, bribe-taping lawmakers, a do-nothing president good only at making speeches, and a top court populated largely by people intent on revoking the U.S. Charter. Even the illegal aliens are jumping ship. Gerald writes on Facebook, no work, no health care, no education. Might as well go back. Now, where do the rest of us go? George in Pennsylvania, I just went to Sears, buy a wetback, found it was made in Mexico. Maybe they've got something there. Parasailin writes, I don't believe that. Ain't free trade great? Waiter, another round of cat food. Any chance in the next election we'll get what we vote for? Tim in Colorado, it says they're tired of the Situation Room. Well, you're wrong, Tim. That's not it at all. And Dan writes, take me with you, amigos. If you want to read more on this, go to my blog, CNN.com/Cafferty File, or through our post on the Situation Room's Facebook page. Wolf?
Jack, thank you.
Drop the taxes, drop socialism. Okay, let's see, you're here with your 2-year-old and you're already in debt. Why are you here today, sir?
Because I hear a president say that he believed in what Lincoln stood for. Lincoln's primary thing was he believed that people had the right to liberty and they had the right...
Sir, what does this have to do with taxes? What does this have to do with your taxes? Do you realize that you're eligible for a $400 credit?
Finish my point. Lincoln believed that people had the right to share in the fruits of their own labor and that government should not take it. And we have clearly gotten to that point.
Wait. Did you know that the state of Lincoln gets $50 billion out of this stimulus? That's $50 billion for this state, sir.
Ma'am, Can you stop this, sir? Hold on.
Okay, well, Kira, we'll move on over here. I think you get the general tenor of this. It's anti-government, anti-CNN, since this is highly promoted by the right-wing conservative network Fox. And since I can't really hear much more, and I think this is not really family viewing, toss it back to you, Kira.
All right, and I know Susan Rosen's having a hard time hearing me, but wow, that is the prime example of what we're following across the country there. Susan.
CNN, because it doesn't respect us. Hey, and that 50 million comes for a fucking prostate.
That's all.
Not representative of people out here. There aren't that many scientists that have Hitler and Obama. There's not that many that have Hitler.
Obama is the Antichrist.
You know what?
Obama is
you know
the
what?
devil.
You are not talking to regular mainstream people. You picked people to talk to.
That's right. That's right.
I don't have a sign. You're not talking to. You didn't talk to him. He doesn't have a sign.
Why don't you tell me why you're here?
We're here because we are sick and tired of the government taking our money and spending it in ways that we have no say in. We have no say whatsoever. The government is being run by the Federal Reserve Bank, and they are getting all of our money. Our kids' money, our grandkids' money. It's not fair.
What if someone said to you, well, your elected officials voted for this stimulus package?
They all need to be thrown out. They're all Congress. It's not just, this is not just Democrats. It's not Republicans. It's all of them. All of them. It's Congress. Bush voted for all this. Obama voted for all of it.
It doesn't really matter to you whether it's Republican or Democrat.
Absolutely not. And most people who are here do not believe that it's just the Republicans or just the Democrats.
And what group are you with that brought you out
Hey, you want to hear
I'm
the
a
truth?
suburban, self-employed woman. I don't have a group.
No, I mean, how did you find out about it then?
Oh, it's all over the news. It's everyone. We all do.
Like online.
Oh yeah, it's all over online. What do you think the internet is for? Are you trying to play stupid?
You know, you really don't need to be so antagonistic.
Well, but we have watched what you've been doing here, and it's not fair.
Talking to people who are holding signs, I'm going to say the majority of the people here have signs.
Did you look at his sign?
I looked at every sign that was in our field of view.
Okay. This is not about Republicans and Democrats. This is about the government stealing our money.
I didn't say it was about Republicans or Democrats.
Well,
so, you guys, there are some people coming here. We're not here with signs. Some people are asking, what does this mean?
It means
you're trying to tell me that you're bad people.
In 1945, an earthenware jar was dug up in a cave west of the Nile near the village of Nag Hammadi, Egypt. Contained in this jar were papyrus scrolls and codices wrapped in leather of biblical text dating back to around 400 AD. Translations of these Nag Hammadi scrolls revealed a body of early Christian teachings that are considered to be Gnostic in character. In other words, these texts contain gospels that had escaped censorship or revision by the Church of Rome, unedited gospels that in fact repudiated the authority of Orthodox Christian doctrine, posing a theological threat which clearly provided an imperative to keep them hidden from Roman clergy. From the Greek word gnosis, meaning knowledge, Gnostic thought insisted upon direct and personal, first-hand religious or mystical experience with deity, and vehemently rejected dogmas, creeds, and clerics, or any superfluous intercessors between man and God, an unwelcome posture for Vatican authority. Yet contained within these lost texts is an exotic description of the origins of Earth and the human species that serious religious scholars dismiss as mythological science fiction, a fantastic and disturbing description of cosmology that reveals an intrusion upon Earth humanity by malevolent, parasitic, extraterrestrial invaders, who use Earth humans as puppets in a vast, centuries-old game of deception and domination. And how do the Gnostic texts describe these invaders? Referred to as archons, they come in two distinct types: an aggressive reptilian humanoid and smaller passive creatures resembling a prematurely formed fetus. The astounding research into Gnostic mystery teachings by author John Lash in his extraordinary book, Not in His Image, may hold the key to unlocking the riddle of ancient extraterrestrial interaction and interference with human evolution. Bizarre as it may seem, a solution to the most baffling enigma of our time was fully elucidated in sacred writings almost 2,000 years ago. In the matter of the ET UFO enigma, the Gnostics were ahead of everyone today, way ahead. The Nag Hammadi material contains reports of visionary experiences of the initiates, including first-hand encounters with inorganic beings called archons, beings that emerged in the solar system prior to the formation of Earth. Over time, an aggressive, masculine reptilian leader, not unlike the biblical Satan, emerged. Arrogant by nature, this demiurge deems himself to be at the center of creation, Lord of all he beholds. Gnostic texts state plainly that demiurge is insane, a demented god, or impostor deity, and he works against humanity. Gnostics warned that we coexist in a planetary system with a demented entity who can access our world through our minds. The demiurge of the Old Testament is an arrogant pretender who claims that humans are made in his image. These 4 words are the corporate motto of patriarchy. Branded on the human soul, made in his image signifies the total enslavement of humanity to an alien, off-planet agenda. Gnostics taught that these entities envy us and feed on our fear. Above all, they attempt to keep us from claiming and evolving our inner light, the gift of divine intelligence within. Archons are an alien force that intrudes subliminally upon the human mind and deviates our intelligence away from its proper and sane applications. They make us play out our inhumane behavior to weird and violent extremes. Archons are psycho-spiritual parasites. Gnostics detected the humanized face of the archons in all authoritarian structures and systems that deny authenticity and self-determination to the individual. According to Gnostic perception, Jesus, if mortal at all, had been a prophet of Amor, the principle of love, and Amor, when inverted or perverted into power, became Roma, Rome, whose opulent, luxurious church seemed to the Gnostics a palpable embodiment and manifestation on earth of Rex Mundi's sovereignty, Rex Mundi being the Archon Lord of the material world. As such, Gnostics came to regard the Christian cross as the emblem of Rex Mundi, an icon of domination and control. Threatened by the growing popularity of these Gnostic ideas, Pope Innocent III launched a holy war in 1209 to eradicate such poisonous heresies. Whole populations were put to the sword in southern France in the Albigensian Crusade, which lasted for decades. This deadly campaign also spawned the murderous Inquisition, designed to ruthlessly exterminate any and all beliefs that challenged papal authority. This crusade was so successful that suppression of these Gnostic teachings has lasted until modern times, certainly a suspicious indication of archon manipulation. The roots of Gnosticism reach far back to the mystery schools of ancient Egypt, yet halfway around the world this same awareness of the archons could be traced to the mystic seers of ancient Mexico as well. Consider these insights shared by Yaqui Indian shaman Juan Matus from Carlos Castaneda's book, The Active Side of Infinity. We have a predator that came from the depths of the cosmos and took over the rule of our lives. Human beings are its prisoners. The predator is our lord and master. It has rendered us docile, helpless. If we want to protest, it suppresses our protest. If we want to act independently, it demands that we don't do so. Indeed, we are held prisoner. They took us over because we are food to them, and they squeeze us mercilessly because we are their sustenance. Sorcerers believe the predators have given us our systems of beliefs, our ideas of good and evil, our social mores. They are the ones who set up our dreams of success or failure. They have given us covetousness, greed, and cowardice. In order to keep us obedient, meek, and weak, the predators engaged a stupendous maneuver. Stupendous, of course, from the point of view of a fighting strategist. A horrendous maneuver from the point of view of those who suffer it. They gave us their mind. The predator's mind is baroque, contradictory, morose, filled with fear of being discovered any minute now. Sorcerers of ancient Mexico reasoned that man must have been a complete being at one point, with stupendous insights, feats of awareness that are mythological legends nowadays. And then, everything seems to disappear, and we have now a sedated man. What I am saying is that what we have against us is not a simple predator. It is very smart and organized. It follows a methodical system to render us useless. Man, the magical being that he is destined to be, is no longer magical. He's an average piece of meat. Is it conceivable that humans could naturally evolve into a malignant species toxic to their own fragile environment, unable to coexist in harmony with the myriad complexities of this planet's ecosystems? Does the fact that 250 genomes within human DNA are not indigenous to this planet suggest humans actually don't belong here? Or have humans been genetically manipulated to be alien to their home world? Or worse, have humans been genetically manipulated to be alien unto themselves? Can it be denied that Homo sapiens have been specifically engineered to serve the agenda of someone or something beyond the scope of their senses that secretly rules their lives? In George Andrews' classic book, Extraterrestrial Friends and Foes, we find an explanation of just how a massive, covert invasion of planet Earth could be successfully perpetrated.
And now, fought with the terrible weapons of super science, menacing all mankind and every creature on Earth, comes the War of the World.
If you were a highly advanced culture about to invade a relatively primitive culture, you would not do it with a flourish of ships, showing up in the heavens and take risk of being fired upon. That's the type of warfare less evolved mortals would get into. You would begin by creating intense confusion. with only inferences of your presence, inferences which cause controversial disagreement. You would make yourself known to various elite in-groups who would offer you protection out of greed, expecting to acquire more perfect knowledge than anyone else on the planet of this ultimate secret to end all secrets. They would covet you, and you would trust their covetousness and their crass stupidity to trap them. You would go to the most secret and powerful organizations within the society. In the case of the United States, you would infiltrate the CIA, and through the use of techniques unknown to them, you would take over some of their key people in their innermost core group. You would occasionally let your ships be seen by some of the ordinary citizens, so that the elite government groups would become involved in attempts to keep them quiet, clumsily squelching attempts to make information about UFO activity public. This would result in the mass population losing confidence in the veracity of their elected officials. There would be constant arguments between the authorities and the public as to whether or not the persistently reported phenomena genuinely existed, thereby setting the population and the government at each other's throats. By subtly causing economic turmoil, you would set the haves and the have-nots at each other's throats. In all possible ways you would plant the seeds of massive discontent. After you had manipulated the population to the point where your covert control over it was complete, you might decide to go overt and let a few ships land in public. But you would not go from covert to overt until you were sure of the totality of your control. Humanity is not about to be invaded. Humanity is not in the middle of an invasion. Humanity has been invaded, and the invasion is nearly in its final stages. Great invasions do not happen with thundering smoke and nuclear weaponry. That is a mark of an immature society. Great invasions happen in secrecy. What I want to get across to you is the ultimate evil, which underlies all the negativity in the cosmos, finds expression in that masked form of psychological complacency that leads an individual to adhere to a group philosophy rather than to think things through for oneself. Those who feel safe and comfortable in no matter what belief system, merely because many others adhere to it, who get together and form an arrogant, self-righteous group convinced it has a monopoly on the truth, and who are ready to persecute, kill, or stifle anyone who challenges that group's philosophy, have formed an alliance with the ultimate evil, whether they know it or not. It is the self-righteousness and implacability of certain elite power groups, like the CIA or the KGB, and certain organized religions, which are so objectionable. As soon as you become involved in a belief system that you are a chosen special group who are lords over the common folk because of your secret knowledge, you are on your way to a fall. That type of attitude plants the seeds of destruction in any society or culture, leaving it vulnerable to overthrow by those oppressed within its boundaries, as well as by outside forces. All cultures who have elite power groups at odds with each other and with the population at large, sooner or later collapse from either internal or external pressures. The only chance of retaining your freedom is for the awareness of this principle to penetrate the consciousness of humanity. It is a pearl of wisdom treasured by those who have attained the ability to travel through time and other life cycles. The unremitting government policy of denial regarding extraterrestrials suggests compliance and collusion with these entities at the highest official levels. Widespread abductions, cattle mutilations, and UFO sightings, combined with a dangerous drift towards a one-world order, suspiciously reveals the alien agenda. In his book, The Day After Roswell, retired Army Colonel Philip Corso former National Security Advisor to President Eisenhower, stated, "We were convinced that whoever the UFO extraterrestrials were, they were tampering with our planet, operating with impudence and manipulating us constantly and secretly. But it was a secret that had our full compliance, because we were unwilling to admit the truth and fight the war. Those of us in the military who knew what was happening also felt that we could be experiencing an invasion that was more of an infiltration. They were compromising our very systems of defense and government. As long as we were incapable of defending ourselves, we had to allow the ETs to intrude as they wished. We had negotiated a kind of surrender with them as long as we couldn't fight them. They dictated the terms because they knew what we feared most was disclosure. Hide the truth, and the truth becomes your enemy. Disclose the truth, and it becomes your weapon. We hid the truth, and the extraterrestrials used it against us." The first step to liberation from this alien control is to unmask the deception. Gnostics fully understood this truth 3,600 years ago. The stupendous success of this alien invasion has been its ability to function in absolute secrecy and seduce the human mind with artificial systems of beliefs, to convince us that we live our lives at the mercy of circumstances and events that exist outside of ourselves. For centuries, this belief, like an insidious mantra, has been drilled relentlessly into our psyches from the cradle to the grave. We have been duped into seeing ourselves as victims, and so we become victims. The Gnostics remind us that the world we see today does not show the face of true human, but rather the insane, homicidal face of the manipulating archon madness that distorts it. Perhaps humanity now confronts its ultimate destiny, to awaken from this artificially induced nightmare and reclaim the divine power within that has always been our true cosmic birthright. Humanity now has the opportunity to rid itself of these other dimensional extraterrestrial parasites. An ever-increasingly widespread realization of the true nature of this predatory game is what will bring about liberation.